so many times we try to control the future or we have these dreams. I realize that we have visions, we all have dreams and that, but I also realize is how do you have these dreams, but also stay in the here and the now? And I'm trying to really work on that myself, is enjoying the process even more. How can I enjoy the toil of every day? When you say, you choose change or change chooses you, there are some things we just can't control. And that's my daily prayer is, God, please present me before me today anything that you want me to do and allow me to step into that with grace. Everything's happened for a reason. And as I look forward and even into the future on that is, I'm really excited about all the things that are happening. But at the same time, I want to make sure I can enjoy the steps where I'm at right now.
One of many things about you that stands out is not only your commitment to your faith, but also to your family. And I know that you come from a very large family. You're the youngest of eight.
That's right.
We grew up in the same town. And how do you think your trajectory, your success was probably in many instances was invested upon and grew from the lessons that you learned from your siblings, your mom, your dad? And I know that you have a very strong sense of
Mm.
family now. You've been married for 20 plus years. You have three beautiful children. How do you think that that has
I,
impacted the success that you have today?
I think it is a huge aspect because, as you know, us both growing up in New Jersey in Brick, um, I think it's a big part of it because it's a very blue collar town. For myself, growing up the youngest of eight kids, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. So I was the lunch ticket kid, Cynthia. I don't know if you knew that, but I would be like embarrassed going through the lunch lines with the lunch tickets. And I think I always say this is never forget who you are and where you come from, because I think a big part of who I am as a man is because of where I come from. And I'm very, very proud to come from Brick and grow up with the people I grew up with and to have the coaches in my life that I had the opportunity to play for in both football, basketball, baseball growing up. And they were huge mentors in my life overall. Um, and I think that as a man today, now living in San Diego, California, I have been married for 24 years and I'm blessed to have a great family. But I think those values get instilled at a young age, regardless of, where one comes from. You get those from your parents and where you grew up. So I'm very, very fortunate and I feel blessed to come from Brick and now having a life where I can impact people nationwide.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I know on your podcast we talked about this, that one of the things that my stepfather, my first stepfather, really embraced was the hustle. He could never be more proud than if I had two jobs and I was putting money in the bank and saving for college or saving money to, pay for my car insurance. I just recall that, that value set was something that left an indelible impression, the importance of family and being connected, but also just having a strong sense of who you are. And it wasn't until, I went off to college that I realized other people lived really differently. And in some instances, they could have been very affluent, but maybe they were very disconnected from their families. They didn't feel a strong sense of family, but also,
Right.
those gifts of just understanding like what's ultimately most important. And achievement. I know for you, you were incredibly successful. You were, I just, it's funny, as I was reading your book, it just reaffirmed some of the things that I recall. We went to two different high schools, but you were like the football guy. And then you went on to play in college, and just achieving like scholastically for both of us was something that my parents really,
Mm.
they were very, very proud of, because to them, that was like hard work plus discipline equals success. And how do you think over the course of the past, 30, 40 years, you went on to play in the football league in Europe and, then kind of transitioned to grad school, met your wife. How do you think, this trajectory, what are the things about playing sports that translated into good characteristics that have allowed you to build a phenomenal business and to be in a position where you're continuing to influence people of various age groups?
Yeah. I'll share this, and it does go back a bit, is because when I was a young boy in Brick, My parents got divorced when I was 5 years old. So between 5 and 10, when my father came back into my life, I always felt like I had something to prove, right? I was the youngest of 8 kids, so you gotta prove yourself when you're the youngest. And then not having a father, I felt almost as if I had to, achieve a certain level of success to get people's love, right? Like that was just me as a kid. So as you mentioned, growing up, to me, sports was the way out. And that to me, when I started getting success in sport, I realized, hey, okay, I'm pretty good in this. So I knew that was my way. If I want to get a college scholarship, that football could be that thing. And from 5 to 18, I found success in sport. I believe it's because in the parents going through a tough time, not having money. I knew that I felt like inside, like I had something in me that was special, not really knowing what that was as a kid. But looking back now, I realize it's a big part of who I am and the success that I've had. What I always say is this now is with complete humility is whatever one has success wise is you take it with a grain of salt. Like to me, even right now, I feel like there's so much that I have not yet done that I'm only getting started in a lot of ways. And in reflection, yes, I've done some decent things in that, but I feel like the best really is yet to come, and there's so much ahead of me that I guess that's kind of the mindset that I have is I'm very, very grateful for where I come from and what was instilled in me from the Coach Wolves of the world, who I just dedicated my last book to. These are coaches and mentors that even now in my early 50s, I feel like are are people that I'm gonna always lean in on. So it's an interesting thing when you look back. Again, I have five sisters, so five sisters, two brothers. I always had something to prove as the youngest of the eight.
Yeah, I mean, I find it so interesting because I think I realized that because I grew up in Monmouth County, so I grew up in Wall, and then my mom got remarried, and we relocated to Ocean County, and I recall one of the big things that I recognized pretty early on, if I was going to, and I knew this from the beginning, I was always going to leave New Jersey. I was born in South Carolina. I just knew that I was going to live outside the state, and achievement was how I did that. Like that was achieve,
Yeah.
achieve, achieve. And that was going
Right.
to be my ticket out. Although again, I love my friends from New Jersey. I just knew fervently that for me, I was meant to be probably in the South, and that's where I am. And that's where I've been this whole time. So for many different directions, I think the lessons that we learn as children, as young adults, kind of, we can head in multiple different directions. But I think one of the defining characteristics that I see in both of us is that we're never just settling. We're always ensuring that we're continuing to be challenged, that we're pushing ourselves. And certainly you've had some big pivots over the last couple of years, not
Mm,
just spiritually, physically,
yeah.
financially, in every direction. And it's, God's guidance guiding you in a direction that he foresees that he wants you to be within.
Mm,
You know, one of the things that I took away from reading your books is you choose change or change chooses you.
mm.
How do you think that has helped define the last 53 years of your life in terms of when you look retrospectively? I think it's easy for us to look back, but it's sometimes in the moment we don't realize that the changes that we're making can have a profound net impact on the trajectory of our lives.
Mm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think so many times we try to control the future or we have these dreams. And listen, I'm the biggest dreamer there is. Like I'm always looking at the vision of the future. And heck, I'm working on another vision board right now with my team at Impact X Performance. Like we're working on vision boards and not just like the pictures, but what we're going to create in the next 1, 3, and 10 years. And um, like I realize that we have visions, we all have dreams and that, but I also realize is how do you have these dreams, but also stay in the here and the now? And I'm trying to really work on that myself, is enjoying the process even more. I love to roll up my sleeves and get dirty and really go through that. But how can I enjoy the toil of every day? And when you say, you choose change or change chooses you, there are some things we just can't control. And relinquishing control of the things we can't control is hard. And that's my daily prayer is, God, please present me before me today. Anything that you want me to do, and allow me to step into that with grace. And there's a lot of things we can't control, but I look back and I'm like, okay, everything's happened for a reason. And as I look forward and even into the future on that, is I'm really excited about all the things that are happening. But at the same time, I want to make sure I can enjoy the steps where I'm at right now. So it's something that we rhetorically say, hey, you choose change or change chooses you. It is the truth. There are changes inside each and every one of us that we know we need to make. If you quiet everything down, you go out for a walk with the pup, and you're like, man, in your self talk, you're saying these things of maybe one, two, or three things personally or even professionally that you want to change. But why is it so many times it takes us a year or three to make the changes? Or in my case, change was chosen for me. I didn't choose some of the changes that actually happened. They were chosen for me, and I had to step into them and say, okay, where are they leading me? I'm not sure, but I've got to step into it.
Well, and I think in so many different ways, when I reflect back on my previous 53 years, the things that have been my greatest teachers have been when it's been hard. Like I tell people transparently, 2019 into 2020, no one would have questioned me not making certain decisions. No one would have questioned, we picked up in 2020 and left Northern Virginia. We had lived there for 20 years. We
Yep.
picked up and moved, and one of the best decisions we ever made. And so I
Mm,
think sometimes, God, the universe is kind of pushing you gently in a particular direction. And I think it's hard. It's people have a hard time, they can get into analysis paralysis. They feel like there's too many choices. They can't make a decision. And I said, sometimes the best decision you can make is not making a decision,
right.
not forcing a decision, not forcing an outcome. I think it's human nature that when we're uncomfortable, we don't want to sit in silence. We don't per se want to
Mm,
not make a decision. And sometimes the best thing we can do is to kind of just sit and be mindful and wait. And that's against, again, it's the human nature piece. So many people struggle with that. They want to force an outcome, which I used to look back retrospectively, I think in my 20s when I was doing a second degree and I was in a new city and had a whole bunch of new friends and trying to navigate decisions. And in many, many instances, change can be challenging and change can
right.
be paralyzing when you're
Abs-
speaking to, and I know that you do a lot of motivational speaking, and Todd is restrained right now. Todd has a massive extroverted personality and he brings so much enthusiasm, but right now he's kind of restrained and quiet. But when you walk into a room and you're motivating a group of people, how do you dig deep to be able to get people to see things from your perspective or from a different
mm.
perspective, to get out of their own way, to motivate them?
I believe that's one of my divine gifts. When I'm in a room, whether it's 100 people, 500 people, 1,000 or more, I get lit up by groups.
Hmm.
I really get lit up, and I enjoy the process of that and sharing a lot of the stories. Because I always remind myself, it's not about me. When I'm speaking, it's not about me. It's how can my story inspire others to live their best life? I would say live a life worth telling a story about. What's your story? How can you get into one's body, mind, soul to the point where you inspire them that, hey, I'm either worth more, or I deserve to step into this next iteration of myself? How do I get my mojo back? How do I restore my energy, my passion, my purpose? Like, these are the things I step into when I'm on stage. And people are always like, are you always this fired up? And my wife would be, no, he's not always this fired up. But I am always excited about the opportunity to speak and meet. I was like, if I can reach one person on this podcast here, Cynthia, or on stage, regardless of the sector or industry, then my job is done, because that's when I feel like I'm serving my best, is when I'm able to share and get into someone's mind and say, I can do this, I'm meant for this, and inspires them to take action for what needs to happen.
Now, before you get on stage, do you have any rituals? And the reason why I'm asking is I have rituals that I do to kind of, as an introvert, I have to be like mentally ready to get up and speak to people. What are the things that you do to get mentally dialed in to be able to step on stage and serve your community?
Yeah, I have a bunch actually. I created a course last year of this, because it's so important. Like, it's like your habits. And for me, every time, it doesn't matter what time I'm starting, it starts with my morning workout, my morning routine. And like I get my workout in, I rehearse everything I'm gonna say, I visualize everything I'm gonna say, and my review my points and how I'm gonna connect with the audience. And then I literally sit down and meditate and visualize going through that for 45 minutes to an hour after my workout. And if I'm on stage at 7:30 in the morning, then I'm up at 4:30 going through that, because that's going to get the energy flowing and going, um, when you can do that. And then when I'm going through it, the other thing that I do is like right before I'm going out, I have a whole breath work routine
Yep.
that I do, because the breath work, what I realized early on, 15 years ago or so, I got so excited, I get too excited. I start hyperventilating before I go out. So I had to learn how to use my breath to actually slow everything down, because you have to manipulate the energy on the stage, that you're not always just on fire, but you're bringing people through the ups and the downs of the story. And I know in the stories I share, there's highs and there's lows of every story, like everyone has highs and lows. So the breath can really help deliver the experience that you're hoping for, so that you can master the delivery so it really hits people as hard as it needs to hit.
Do you listen to any particular music or inspirational quotes, or is there anything that you do? So
Yeah.
I'm kind of leaning into this because I'm going to share after you share what I do, which is what gets me pumped up, if you will, to get on stage as an introvert. I just keep emphasizing that. I think a lot of people don't realize I'm a huge introvert.
Yeah. Specifically, I have a playlist that I
I
listen,
know. I figured you did.
and my playlist is it's called GYMR9. Get your mind right, number nine. I have all these different playlists for different things, and it's all music that to me, gets me excited and fired up. And it's a range of music. It's all different genres, but I put it together, and that's kind of my, like, I don't want to say hype music. It's kind of just like I feel like $1 million. Um, when I listen to it. I'm also then usually I'm on the elliptical kind of visualizing my notes, and I'm going through it for like 30, 40 minutes. And then I hit the weights. And that playlist for me is my key that it's game time. I gotta start locking in. And I do that, I go eat, and then I'm showered and ready to go. But for me, it's like when I speak, it's game day. And my game day is I got to perform, and I got to do my best to make sure that the message comes across. Again, not for people to say, "Oh, what an awesome story he's got." No, that's not the point. It's how can my story inspire someone else to live their best story? And that's always the thing I tell any speaker is it's not about you. It's about using your story or experience or wisdom to inspire others to live their best life. And that's what I try to do. And I've learned that lesson now many times over about, man, you're trying to reach hundreds or thousands of people. Use your story to inspire those to step into the best version of themselves.
Yeah, you can understand why Todd is so successful, especially in this motivational speaking, because he really does the work. He puts in all the work and effort to make sure that he shows up in the best way possible. So the two things that I've learned, I get nervous before I speak on stage, so I do breath work so that I can slow my heart rate down so that I can, sympathetic, get out of the sympathetic, get into the parasympathetic and get into a
Right.
flow state because when I step on stage that way, then it
Yep.
just flows. But the one thing that I do, and it was probably maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and they said, what song do you want to enter the stage at? And I said, I don't know. Well, anyone that is familiar with Virginia Tech, they know that Enter Sandman is their
I
battle
love it.
cry. And
Yep.
so this is before my oldest is now a student at Virginia Tech. When I hear Enter Sandman, I get goosebumps.
Yeah.
It pumps me up in a way that is probably a little bit odd, but it gets me very emotional. So for me, that's usually what I have playing before I get on stage because it just gets me in the right mindset. Like go out there and do what you do best. And the irony is now that I have a child at Virginia Tech, I get to hear that song all the time.
I love that. I love
Life
it.
imitating art. But for me, that's part of my process. But the same thing with you. I get up, I exercise. That's part of it. I like
Mm.
quiet time before I get on stage. I'm not someone that shows up an hour before my talk. I'm usually the person that shows up 15 to 20 minutes before my talk because I actually do better being introspective prior to delivering a talk or something that's motivational, because I'm protecting my energy. So I know myself well enough. I am extroverted enough that I can get on stage and deliver this speech, but I'm
Mm,
also cognizant of the fact I'm never going to be Tony Robbins. I'm never going to be someone that gets up in front of 10,000 people and feeds off the audience. I get up and I do what I need to do. I do it well, just like you do. But I love hearing how other people prepare themselves mentally for these kinds of events. Have you ever had a time where there was a glitch, your slides didn't work, there was some type
oh,
of
oh,
technical thing? This just happened to me. That's why I'm asking.
I've had so
Um,
many.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
the,
from
and the,
getting stuck in an elevator and not, I literally had the fire department have to come get me and almost missed the
no.
talk to all of that. Absolutely. Or you come out and your walkout song isn't playing and you're just, it's kind of, everything is very systematic, right? As you know. So the slides, now, obviously, you learn a lot of lessons there where the tech doesn't work and the
Yep.
slides or the videos aren't working if you've got any slides. So you just got to know your stuff so well that, hey, I don't need the slides. I don't need the videos. I can go out there and just be me if I have to. But oh yeah, I've had all that. And speaking of Tony Robbins, I actually learned something from him years ago that I still use right before I go on stage. It's an energy, and anyone could use this at any time. Where it's almost like Wim Hof breath work.
Hmm.
That I do it like shh shh
Yep.
and I'm actually trying to take the energy that was manifested within and start to like get it out of me. And this is like right before, so that I realize it's energy is going out. And if we look at ourselves as energy fields of how do we take this energy so people can almost feel the radiant energy coming out. And I learned that years ago and I still use it right before I go out is all right, it's time to take, like if you go to your heart, you go to your inner self and you've manifested this great energy in the morning and from how you live, how do you then take that and radiate it out so people can feel that? And to me, that's the one thing I think that will make some of our talks unique is people feel it. It's not
Hmm.
just words. I always say people got to feel you in the back of the room. They got to feel you. Well, how do you make people feel something? It's how you say it. It's the energy you come across, and it's authentic, and it's organic in that. So I think it all comes into play, and Cynthia, the same way you come across on stage as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. The reason why I asked if you've ever had a tech glitch. So this happened to me for the first time in November. I was
Oh,
at an event called Eudaimonia where like Huberman Lab, Gabrielle Lyon, Mark Hyman, all these big people in the health and wellness space were there, and humble old me. And I get up on stage and, they're apologizing like, Cynthia, we can't get your slides to work. It wasn't my issue with my slides. It was like they were having a computer malfunction. And, after 15 minutes, I've got a full room and I just said, I'm going to just go. And here's the differentiator. I know my material so well. I was able to talk from memory. And I said, the only thing I ask is that you share my slides with this group of people because they came here to see me speak. And
right.
I have good slides. Like I actually have slides that would be helpful for them to have. But I remember after the fact, one of the organizers came up to me and said, thank you for being so gracious. And I said, well, of course, why would I not be? And they said, a lot of people would have been rattled. They would have been really rattled. They would have been upset. They would have been flustered. They would not have been able to deliver. And I said, I'm a professional. Like, I take this
Yeah.
seriously. And it was like, I was prepared. I knew what was on my slides. And therefore, for that reason, I can get up and I can speak to people. And I would say, well, hey, I'd love to show you this article, but I can't actually do it. So just know that you'll be getting all of these in your email in a PDF later today. But I think it goes back to anything in life when
Mm.
things don't work the way that we want them to, where the way we expect them to. How do we show up in life when things don't go the way we want them to or the way that we anticipate they will go? And to me, it's just, you got to roll with the punches.
Yeah. You almost wonder sometimes if your talk was better by being extraneous, meaning
Hmm.
it's not so rehearsed that you had to be so in the moment. Like, what's the next slide? What's next?
Yeah.
Like, you were so in the moment that you sometimes wonder, was it better that way? And what was the feedback? So when things go wrong, sometimes like, okay, I'm gonna roll and flow with it and see what happens. And they're like, oh my gosh, that was the best talk ever. You're like, was it? Maybe I should never use a slide and I should just go and do my thing, right? So it's always interesting when something like that happens.
Yeah, and I think it always falls back on your training. Like
That's
you're
right.
an athlete. I'm a clinician in the midst of chaos in a hospital. And if anyone's watching The Pit right now, which I'm completely obsessed with because it is the only medical drama I've ever watched that is even remotely accurate, as a former ER nurse in inner city Baltimore, if I
Ooh.
was calm,
Mm,
everyone was calm. So it's like when all the tech people were freaking out, I was like, it's okay. Like, I'm a professional. I'm still going to give my talk. I'm not going to get upset about it. There's nothing to get upset about. And I think it goes back to we all fall back to our training.
right.
Ultimately, like even we had a snafu with our puppy like 2 weeks ago because of something that my teenage son did, which was,
Uh-oh.
one of
Uh-oh.
those stupid lessons that teenagers will learn. And he kept saying, "You're so calm." And I said, "What is, if I'm not calm, how is that going to help the situation? Like, we're
Mm,
dealing with an emergency. And if I'm not calm, you're not going to be calm. The dog's going to be in a worse state. The vet's not going to be able to do their job." And so I think that some of the lessons we learn throughout our lifetime are designed to, how do we show up when there's an emergency, an urgency, or
right.
something just doesn't go our way? Because that is part of life. Life is not predictable. I wish it was, but it's not.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. They say that what you raise up to your level of expectations or fall down to your level of training. And that's exactly right.
Yeah. And I think, in so many instances when I reflect on, yeah, the transition I made 9 years ago, leaving traditional kind of allopathic medicine and starting my own business and having my own practice, the concept of big, hairy, audacious goals. So I know you love acronyms, Todd.
I do.
I think all of us need to have these, irrespective of where we are in time and space. And
Mm.
how do you think setting, whether it's your vision board, whether it's sitting down with your team, whether it's, making family goals, how do you feel like defining big, hairy, audacious goals has been kind of a defining feature of your life?
Well, goals give us life. Goals give us the life. They give us the energy. But many times when we become adults, we stop dreaming. We stop having dreams. So if you don't have a dream, then what are you working for other than you're just showing up and going through the paces every day? So to me, whether it be a big, hairy, audacious goal or what's your dream? Um, I have every, I have this thing I do every year, and it's called my God-sized dreams planner, and it's literally the questions that one would go through to ask yourself, what are your big dreams? What are your dreams for this year? What are your dreams with your family? What kind of dream trips do you want to take? And it puts you in a vibration or a space where you actually operate at a higher level because you're dreaming, and dreams give us life. So when I say that, um, some people I work with in the life coaching department, they haven't dreamt in years. They don't have any big dreams, or their dreams are about other people. And I think we all need our own personal dreams, whatever that looks like, whether they be financially, relationally, professionally, physically, spiritually. Like, what are those dreams that you want to achieve? And when you write them down, then they really take life. And when you write them, when you think them and you write them down and then you share them, they even take more, like they take more of life to say, okay, this is what I'm about and this is what I'm being ordained to do. And then the next thing you know, they start manifesting, they start happening. And to me, I've lived the last 15 years of my life and career by that exact step. And does it always happen? No, it doesn't. But it's certainly going to get you in a direction and a vibration and put you in a mindset on a daily that's going to allow you to live, I'll say, more fully and more fruitfully with your spouse, with your kids, with your family, with your profession, whatever that may be. So dreams are essential, and we've got to have dreams, and that's why we read. That's why we read books, and that it is really good for our minds, and it's sometimes good for our souls. So I'm a huge dreamer, and I've lived my life that way. But I don't like just to dream and dream. I like to dream and then take action to move closer to what those dreams may well become.
Yeah, I think it's important, because I have teenagers. I have two boys, one's 19, one's 17. And my older son is a little more open minded than my 17-year-old. And so my 17-year-old said, "Oh, are you just going to manifest?" He's like, manifest air quotes. And I said, if you actually look at the science, there's real
Mm,
science behind this. And so I think it's important to have dreams and wishes. And I've been putting into, when I designed the supplement line, I said, I'm going to sell this in 3 to 5 years.
yep.
It's already happened. It's already in the process. I'm doing all the right things. But from my perspective, when I start saying those dreams out loud, it's because I really believe that I'm calling them into
Right.
the possibility of actually occurring. And I think we play it safe when we don't talk about what we're dreaming about. Like I encourage my kids, the big audacious goals. I'm like, you should have big audacious goals. And it's
Right.
okay if you end up deciding you don't want to go to graduate school, or you don't want that kind of job, or you decide to change your major, or that relationship you thought was going somewhere is not going somewhere. I think it's helpful for all of us to challenge ourselves and to not get stagnant. It is so easy to be complacent,
That's
isn't it?
right.
It's
That's
easier
so
to be complacent.
absolutely. I remember people saying that. You remember the whole Think and Grow Rich?
Yes.
Not Think and Grow Rich. It was The Secret. It was The Secret.
Yes.
And the secret was all about like think you're going to become a millionaire and you will become a millionaire. And it's like I've had so many arguments or discussions about this. Is like, no, just because you think you're going to do it or you dream it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But when you dream it and you do think it, you think it into existence, because when you think it, if you write it and share it, then you're more likely to take action on it. Just because you think it doesn't mean something's going to happen. Because the last I checked, everyone wants to be healthy. Everyone wants more money. Everyone wants like the best life. But when you actually can think it and you take action on what steps are necessary to help you get you to where you want to go, then you're more likely to quote manifest what is there. But you got to first think it and dream it to become it.
Yeah. I just think it's so easy to, I think about my father who passed
Mm,
last year, and, he said to me years ago, when I was going off to graduate school, you finally are actualizing your potential.
mm,
And, that hit me hard because in
mm.
many ways, I was living up to what he thought my potential was.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to him, I think that you're not setting your sights high enough, because to me it was like, well, this is, of course, this is where I'm going to get a second degree, and this is where I'm going to grad school. Of course, this is what I'm doing, but that I'm not setting the level right here. It's like the level's up here. And
Right.
that's always been, what's the next thing I can do to get myself closer to a place where I continue to be challenged intellectually. It's interesting. This morning, I interviewed Dr. Heather Sandison, and so she's out, ironically, in California, and she is a physician that deals solely with patients with Alzheimer's. So she talks about all the things that we can be doing lifestyle wise that can lessen the likelihood we'll ever deal with cognitive decline. Because I don't know if you're at this stage of life, Todd, but a lot of conversations with girlfriends were now like, okay, make sure you let me know if you ever notice I'm like not remembering things, or I'm acting goofy,
Right.
or struggling with words, or struggling to find a phrase or something that should be familiarized with. And so when I think about the concept of challenging yourself,
Mm,
and how some people embrace that and other people kind of turn their backs and are like, I don't need to continue growing. But continuing to learn is so important for brain health and reasoning and executive function. And so I know for you, this is something that you also embrace, that you are very conscientious about um, reading, listening to podcasts, probably getting your own. I always say the best coaches are being coached by someone else to kind of level up your mindset. So I'm curious right now, are there specific books or podcasts that you find particularly helpful in this area? Because I think this is something that's always, it's almost like a stone that's constantly being sharpened, or a stone that's constantly being shined. It's something you're continuing to refine throughout your lifetime. It's a never ending process, is essentially what I'm saying.
right, right. Absolutely. It's interesting because when you think about you can only go as far as you grow, the times I've been most stale in my life where I feel like I'm just not growing, it's typically I'm not reading or I'm not investing in coaching myself. And I'm someone who coaches a lot of other people, but I need to be coached myself to keep
Mhm.
going beyond the upper limit. And as I share this right now while I'm based in San Diego. I'm actually recording this with you. I'm in Alabama at an event, and I have my books literally right here. I'm rereading The Big Leap. I don't
It's a
think it's
great book.
that, but great book, The Big Leap. And I've got another book here, Free PR, that was recommended by my coach. And it's all about how to, from Cameron Harold. So I'm reading right now. I'm here presenting and speaking, but I'm reading and learning and growing because I just find that the mind, especially nowadays, it's easier to scroll on Instagram,
Hmm.
and I don't feel like you can get the depth that you need when you can really invest, a week or two reading someone's book and go deep. Cynthia, and I know, you had just sent out a book to my wife and she loved it. She was voraciously going through the whole book and she was loving it. It's like, how can we grow deeper? And I think that's investing in yourself, whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast. I try to listen to most every day during the week a podcast when I'm out for a walk and working out. And then having a coach, I mean, whether it be a life coach, a business coach, a spiritual coach. Um, I've been a coach for 20 plus years, but a majority of that time I've always had a coach in different areas of my life as well. So I'm a huge advocate of ongoing growth personally and professionally to help keep your mind sharp so you can go back and do great things as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reflecting on this because we moved into a new house in 2021, and we did a big downsize, which was a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes my teenagers complain about it, but here in Richmond, not everyone has a basement, so we have a third floor instead of a basement. Well, it's taken a while to kind of continue to purge, organize. We're almost there, but I have so many books, Todd,
Oh,
thousands and thousands of books. And so one of my goals has been to get myself better organized with the books because some books I could donate and someone would still benefit from the books. I look at books as a life force. Like I'm always reading. In fact, this is how much of a nerd I am. I am going to be interviewing a biological dentist on the podcast, and this book called Jaws. It's talking about it's a hidden epidemic, but it's talking about how like modern dentistry has contributed to a lot of like breathing problems and spatial problems with your tongue and all sorts of stuff. But I think for all of us, it's continuing to be challenged. So I jokingly have said, I mean, I've been in some type of a variation of a training program my entire adult life. So I'm getting ready to finish up a functional training. I'm always doing like, I'll say, oh, I need to do this. There's always something I'm learning from. I agree with you about having coaches throughout our trajectory of our lifetime. I just spent about 2 years with someone doing a lot of spiritual work that was fantastic, only
mm,
added to being in the right mindset and thinking about things differently. I think finding the reframe in so many instances, it is very easy on social media, even for those of us that have businesses, to
yep.
sometimes I just put my blinders on now. I don't allow anyone to distract me from my purpose and who I serve. I'm like, there's plenty of room for plenty of people. I just don't believe in a scarcity mindset. But I think having a coach makes me better at everything I do because
100%.
I'm
Yeah.
accountable to someone. And I think that you
Mm-hmm.
can only watch so much Netflix, you can only watch so much Hulu. I need to stimulate my brain, whether it's with a podcast or Audible has been like my best friend, Todd. Honestly, I probably listen to more books
Yes.
than I do podcasts right now because I get interested in something. And admittedly, I get very nerdy. I'll get very interested in a subject and my husband's like, have at it. You spend 25 hours listening to an Audible book on the Challenger disaster. And I don't
Mhm.
share that to be morbid. It's just, it's interesting, all the logistics of what kind of played a role in that. But I think for each one of us, finding ways to stimulate our brain or
Yeah.
stimulate our spiritual side and continue to offer value to our communities is really important.
Yeah.
And I know you're chuckling. You saw
I,
that cover of
I'm
that
well, I'm
book.
laughing. I'm laughing at your 1,000 books because
Oh, it's insane.
it's the one thing that Melanie and I, my wife and I, she's like, can we get rid of half your books?
Yep.
You
My
read these things
husband.
like 20 years ago. You don't need them. And I got my mom, my late mom who just passed. She had like she will not throw anything out. And I'm like, no, don't throw that book out. I might read it again. She's like, you're not going to read this book again. It was written in 2003. I'm like, don't throw it out. So I've got like a room that's a library that
Yeah.
I will not throw anything out. I'm like, don't touch any of these books. They're like prized possessions. So I'm laughing about your 1,000 books because I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good problem to have. And what's ironic is when my dad passed and my brother and I had to clean out their condo, my dad was a voracious reader. He still had his paper doctoral dissertation from the 1960s. And so my brother and I were, he still had his, and we're dating ourselves by saying this, but his index cards, because back then you didn't have a computer. He had index cards
Oh,
with
it's
rubber
great.
bands, and the rubber bands were falling apart. And then he had books, I mean, books that I was like, I'm not sure a library even wants these books, but he had so many books.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good problem to have.
Mm,
If you have to have something like that around, that to me speaks to someone that has an intellectual curiosity about the world and just wants to learn more. Now, my husband's an engineer. In his mindset, it takes up too much room. So
right.
he would like me to get rid of said books. So I do have some books that I probably will never read that are now, we're going to donate them to a homeless shelter, but they'll go to good use. They will still get used. But yes, I chuckle because I still have some of my medical books. Like I have my biochemistry text, I have my organic chemistry text, my physics. Why? I do not know. Maybe it's time to get rid of those.
I'm always
But
like, hon, don't touch my home office or the home gym. Anything else in this house, you can do whatever else you want in this entire house. But the home gym and the home office, don't touch it. Oh.
I love that. So let's talk about your morning routine because you talk about this in your books. It is very structured. Again, I think that this is what sets you up for success for the day. And there are probably many people listening that are curious what we do in the morning to set ourselves up because it is not willy-nilly. I mean, there is purpose behind it. And I think the purpose is what contributes to the tremendous success that you see because you are so conscientious about your time and where your attention goes.
Mm, yeah. Well, it's unfortunately learned a lot from also making the mistakes of how do I structure my time and energy so I can produce and be how I want to be. My morning routine actually starts the night before. My nighttime routine, I learned that during the pandemic. I use a 3-2-1 technique at night. 3 hours before I go to sleep, I eat. 2 hours, I shut down work, and the last hour is personal care because that last hour, especially during the pandemic, I was always on my phone and I was not, I wasn't doing what I need to do. I was stretch, read some books, get some, quiet time with the missus, like all of the things that are important, I wasn't doing. So 3-2-1 at night, try to get some good sleep, which that's another story. But during the pandemic, was diagnosed from our good friend Gabrielle Lyon with sleep apnea, and now I'm like really, really fanatical about the quality of sleep that I get. Then I go into my morning routine because if I get a good night's sleep, then I'm rested enough to do my morning routine. And this is the routine that works for me. So please don't feel like you need to replicate anyone. Like this is my routine and it's taken years to kind of get into my routine, but I call it my holy hour. And my holy hour is actually 2 hours, but I call it my holy hour because it's my time. And between like 5 and 7 ish is the time I get for myself. And it's my I call it selfish, but it's more being selfless so I can serve the rest of the day. I mean, for me, I take about 15 to 20 minutes of quiet time in the morning. I journal, I get in the word, and I do my prayer time. And then I go in my home gym. I get the dog out for a walk, which is typically 20, 30 minutes. And I get my home gym. I work out, and I love my home gym workouts because no one's bothering me. I'm listening to a podcast. I try to work out my own gym, and people are coming up to me, hey, quick question. And the quick question isn't a quick question. It's a 20-minute discussion, and I lose my mojo during the workout. So I get that time in and I get my stretch time. And I like to journal a little bit again on my upcoming day and get my big five. I send out 3 texts. This is always, people always like intrigued by this, but I send out 3 texts a day to someone who's been on my mind or is on my mind at that moment of just like some inspiration to someone like, hey, you're on my mind. I'm thinking of you. Thank you for everything that you do. I love working with you, or whoever it may be. And if I do 3 a day, that's 15 a week that I'm getting in, Monday through Friday. To me, that's the routine that allows me then to go in, get my breakfast, eat good, because the morning, breakfast, if you one's eating, not fasting, um, is like that's a 2 hour window of time for me. That's all me. And then I'm ready to go do my thing. And whether that means I'm going to the gym to train people, I'm doing my life coaching, I'm working on the franchise, whatever that is, now I'm ready to go. That by 8 o'clock, again, I know we talked on my show that you like to sleep in. I'm a morning guy, so I like to go to bed early. I get up early, and then I'm ready to conquer the day by 8 o'clock.
Yeah, and I think for each one of us, it's figuring out, what works. For years, I was up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock and
Yeah.
going to the gym and then going to the hospital. And I think the pandemic for us just reaffirmed until we got the puppy. I like to sleep till 7. Now
Yeah.
I don't get to do that. The puppy is like up at 6:30. If he lets me sleep till 6:40, we're having a pretty good day. And so it just reminds me that we have to constantly be evolving, but that special kind of time, like within my business, I'm not in front of people within my business before 11. And I can manage that
Mm,
most days. Obviously with when the book launch comes, I won't. I'll be beholden to other people's schedules, but that's because I take that morning time to do the things that allow me to show up in my business. And actually, I
right.
found with book writing this time around, I did really well writing from 12 to 8. Like that was my time when I had gotten up, I had exercised, I'd eaten, I'd showered to make myself presentable, and then I could write. But if I started earlier in the day, I was grumpy and cranky because I didn't get my exercise in. And much like you talk about this, exercise to me is part stress relief, but it's also so important to invest in avoiding sarcopenia. And let's be clear, we know women are really at a disadvantage as they're
Right.
navigating perimenopause and menopause. And so for so many of us, it's like doing, it's just a part of your daily routine. You have to look at exercise as that. Even if it's one day you're doing Zo2 training with a weighted vest, like there's not a flat surface in my entire neighborhood. It is the rolling hills of Central Virginia. I don't even need the weighted vest to get my heart rate up because there are so many hills walking the dogs. And so I think for each one of us, it's figuring out what works best. And I love that you start at night. You're not, you're setting yourself up for success in the morning by having that 3-2-1.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
Todd, one thing in your book that really stood out, and it made me think about it when you mentioned every day you send 3 texts to people you're thinking about. You mentioned in the book that you have a good friend who has had a terrible diagnosis. And you mentioned in the book that you reached out to him and your approach to inspiring him or supporting him. And he said, you're probably not accustomed to this kind of vernacular given the severity of your injuries, but I just want you to know I'm here for you. And so the concept of intentionality is something
Mm,
that is woven throughout your work, throughout your all of your books, being intentional with the people that you care about. For you personally, having gone through a really tough few years physically, you played, sports your entire lifetime. And, for those that read True Strength, there is a photo of the x-ray of Todd's back, which when I looked at it, I thought to myself, it's unbelievable that you are still standing, moving around, but you never allowed yourself to feel like a victim. You experienced the whole constellation of emotions as you were navigating treatment decisions. You had, one knee done, another knee done, then you had this serious back issue, which ultimately you were able to successfully kind of navigate without what sounded like a horrific surgical intervention that was presented to you until you found the right provider. What was that process like for you, having in light of the fact that you were this incredibly positive, thoughtful, intentional person? What has that taught you about yourself?
mm. You want to go there, huh, Cynthia?
I do. I do. It's, your book is called True Strength. We might as
Yeah.
well like touch on this very important topic.
Yeah, it's interesting. Looking back, it's interesting because, um, man, everyone's got their own story, right? During the pandemic and the battles they faced, and maybe some people are facing them today. I just happened to face mine over a 3.5 year period that I say is like hell. Um, it makes sense now, but going through it, it was very, very difficult. I always say this: be the most positive person you know. And I pride myself on me being that way with like, I'm going to be the most positive person that I know, and I'm going to battle like heck to do that. This period of time for me was the most difficult time. Um, e- and that includes I lost my father at the age of 20. Um, and going through this long battle, I went into that pandemic burnt out of everything I was doing. I was shot. I had a lot of success inside the fitness field, but there was something inside of me that said, man, there's like more, there's something deeper that you're not scratching yet. And this was more the whispers that was, like, I know there's another level. So when this all hit, I had my second knee replacement in 2020. And I'll fast forward, I'll tell the short story. And if you want to extract anything out, feel free. 6 weeks after that surgery, my back started killing me. And I'm like, I go to the doc. I said, Doc, can I get an x-ray? My back is killing me. He's like, your back? What's wrong with your back? I'm like, I don't know, but I know back injury. I know pain. He took the x-ray, and that's what you see there in the book. um, they told me I needed a 14-hour surgery. And I remember going out in the car with my wife from that appointment and bawling like a baby. And here I am, like trying to save the world in the middle of the pandemic. It was 2021. I was trying to save gyms and fitness professionals and everyone I was working with. And I was crying, like, how could God do this to me? Like I'm a force for good. I'm trying to help people. And here I am. They tell me I need to take a year off from my life and get a 14-hour surgery. Like, how is this possible? And I went on for like 5 minutes just complaining about everything. And she said, stop, listen to yourself, Todd. She goes, everything you've been saying, like, and preaching for decades about how this is happening for you, not to you. Yeah, it's happening to you, but did you ever stop and think about maybe that in a year from now or two, that God's going to do something with this story that's going to take you 10 times deeper and further than you can imagine right now? And she went off on me, telling me like the stuff that I always say to people. She was now telling me, I'm like, I finally said, time out, stop, because I knew she was right, but I just didn't want to hear it at the time. And fast forward, I went through 3.5 years, Cynthia, of the darkest time of my life, because here I am. I had just come out with Get Your Mind Right book, and Mr. Get Your Mind Right, my mind was now wrong. And I'm trying to fight for my mindset. I'm trying to fight for my health. And, physically, I was a wreck and I couldn't train. And I sold a big portion of my business because I thought I was going to die. Literally, I thought I was going to die. Um, and going through this and traversing this very interesting mental space because of my physical injury, it just proved how your psychology is affected by your physiology, and your physiology is affected by your psychology. And when I came out on the other side, finally, after the second knee replacement, the back injury, being diagnosed with sleep apnea, all within a 3.5 year period, I look back now and I'm blessed because it led me to ultimately form my fitness franchise that I'm doing now. We've got 7 locations nationwide, and I'm really like trying to plant lighthouses across the country where faith is a big part of everything that happened to me, because I didn't choose this. I didn't choose, like, I didn't want a second knee replacement. I didn't want a back injury. Sleep apnea. What's that? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I didn't choose any of that. But now looking back, to me, it's God saying, okay, you want to go to a different level? All right, buckle up. I'm going to help take you to a different level, but you got to have faith that this is all part of it. And now a year later, that's what I've been on fire for in the crusade, to go be a positive beacon of light throughout the country. That's what I'm doing, Cynthia. And that's literally because of that 3.5 year period of what I call hell. And that's what I wrote in True Strength, which was the hardest of my 6 books to write, because sharing the dirt of like what's not right is a lot harder than here's the 8 things that can make you a superstar trainer, or all these things that are good. Well, that's quote easy. I mean, that's just sitting down and writing that. But to share the stuff that I was called to do, because I know what, like, even mental health can do, because I'm the most positive person and I'm battling my own mental health. Like, my mind ain't right. I had 2 young athletes that I know that I coached commit suicide during the pandemic when I was coaching them. I'm like, That's not going to happen any longer on my watch. Like I'm going to put my foot down and step forward and say, listen, men, women, boys and girls, like if you got something wrong, text me, DM me. I got it. I understand. I'm a positive guy, but I also know what it's like to be on the other side when you're battling and you don't want to tell anyone. You don't want to say like, oh, I don't feel good. Oh, this is hurting, or I'm thinking about doing this or that. Two precious lives took their own lives during that pandemic. And now I believe that everything happened for a reason through me so that I can go be a beacon of light for other people through Impact X Performance and my books and the inspirational talks I'm giving. Like now I realize what Melanie was saying was because this was happening for me, not to me. And I've got to have the faith and the belief that, okay, let's go. Let's go.
Well, I know.
That's the short answer.
No,
Sorry.
no, no. I mean, but as I was reading your book, I, as a parent, as a spouse, I mean, all the things I can just imagine you were going through, feeling all the feelings, and you needed to process all of that to get to where you are, even down to you being so injured that you couldn't help your oldest son move into college. And having just done that myself, I cannot even fathom how you were feeling, because it wasn't that you didn't want to be there, as you physically could not be there to help him. But I'm
Yep.
so very grateful that you're now physically feeling so much better, and everything is falling into place, I guess, as it was intended to be. And I think sometimes through adversity, we have incredible opportunity. And that's
Mhm.
really how you've shown up throughout your lifetime. I'd love for you to share with listeners how to connect with you outside of this podcast, how to purchase your newest book, True Strength. You also have Get Your Mind Right. It was fun to read. I read Get Your Mind Right first and then True Strength. And so I was able to see how much more transparent you
Mhm.
were in your most recent book, really sharing, as you said, the really vulnerable
Dirt.
stuff that
Yeah,
allows
dirt.
people to realize like Todd is a real person. Like
Mhm.
you shared the good, bad, and ugly about processing the pain. And for anyone who has not dealt with chronic pain issues, I mean, there is nothing else. I mean, working through the pain and trying to like contribute as an adult, as a spouse, as a father. I mean, that's really incredibly resilient. So kudos to you and to your family for supporting you through that journey.
Yeah, well, thank you. To answer your question, my website, todddurkin.com, todddurkin.com. I'm on Instagram. I love Instagram and social media, just my name, Todd Durkin. On that, those are the best ways to probably reach out to me. If I'm in your area and I'm doing a talk, I love anyone that's listening to come on out to the talk. I will say this, Cynthia, when you're talking about that is, and when you're going through challenge, any kind, physical, mental, it doesn't matter what kind. Um, you don't want to usually share that. And I'm someone who during this time was working with the most elite athletes in the world. And I didn't want to tell them because I'm there to coach them and help them. And they're like, man, you're on fire, Todd. And I'm like, deep down, no, I'm not on fire. But you got to battle to get through each and every day. And I always had that win the day mentality, like win today, win that mentality of like today, I'm going to win today. And what can I do today? But do reach out when people are struggling and battling with something, because people who've been through that done and been there, you read a great book or listen to a podcast like this, you're like, okay, I got this. And then in 6 months or a year, or hopefully not 3.5, but when you get through that time, you realize it was a blessing. And all of this is happening for us, not just to us. And I've said that a few times, but here's a guy, you said it, and get your mind right. Now my question is, how do you get your mind right when your mind's not right? How do you get your mind when your mind's not right? How do you get your mojo back when you know deep down you're made to be someone special, but you're not where you want to be? That's to me when champions are born and made. And now, in some of the guys and gals that I work with on the ball field and in the ring and in the octagon, it's like this is when champions are really made, is when you're going through the tough times and you got to figure out how to get there. And to me, the last 3.5 years of true strength and now coaching greatness, I mean, that's what it's all about.
Amazing. So good to see you, my friend.
So great to see you, Cynthia. Thank you.
Hey, if you like this video, you guys are going to love this video, and I'll see you there.
the conversation I'd love to have with every 35-year-old woman is that once 40 hits, your ovaries are gonna be done, and they're gonna slowly, it's not like it's done overnight, they're gonna slowly decline. It's gonna take 10 to 15 years for these ovaries to be out. But you literally have an organ that is done doing its job. It'd be like if your heart was like, hey, I'm done. I'm just going to slowly like this. I don't understand why we don't talk about this.
Right.